Welcome to Marketing Brew Weekly, Morning Brew Inc.'s podcast for the marketing industry. I'm Jenny Mywin.
I'm Katie Hicks.
And I'm Kelsey Sutton.
Brand pop-ups. You know them, you probably love them, and honestly, most of the time it seems like audiences do too, because pulling off an IRL brand experience can kind of be a go-to way for marketers to drum up conversation, build community, get that in-person feedback right away. But today, the nitty-gritty of pulling off a good brand pop-up versus something that probably should have just stayed in the ideas notebook has definitely evolved. So we're going to dig into what makes a good brand pop-up from the bad ones and put all those details out there. We also have some takes on actual brand pop-ups and whether we think that they should be something that people are emulating or taking notes from, or maybe just something that lives in the past. We'll break it all down. But first, it's always exciting when we can recommend another marketing podcast. And thanks to our sponsor, Marketing Architects, we get to do that today.
That's right. The Marketing Architects podcast has all the hallmarks of a great show. It's thoughtful, a little contrarian, and focused on ideas that you can take back to your team.
Totally. It's one of those shows that covers topics you'll be thinking about even after the episode is over. They dig into research on topics that marketers love to debate, like TV advertising, measurement, and AI.
For smart marketing conversations, search for the Marketing Architects wherever you're listening right now. Okay, to kick off the conversation, I actually think we need to personally define what makes a brand pop-up today. Because I
agree, because I feel like sometimes I get it confused with a stunt.
Exactly, or an experiential activation. All of this is very gray zone, muddy waters. So what do you guys define as a brand pop-up?
Ooh.
In my mind, I feel like a pop-up usually involves some sort of like trial of a product or some sort of like sensory experience, like maybe like a snack or like something provided to people who are coming to your event.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it has to be retail adjacent. It doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily need to be buying things, but I feel like it needs to be kind of a big space, very branded. It's not just like one thing you take a photo of and then leave. It feels
like
more
stunty to me.
Exactly. I think it has to be kind of like a walk through, like sensory sort of experience. And that could be if you're selling a product, engaging with that, or if you're promoting IP of some kind, just engaging with it in a more sensory way. That's kind of how I think about it. Yeah. And I think that a pop-up and experiential are sort of one and the same at this point. You know what I mean?
I think the key piece of that, I totally agree with you, Kelsey. I think that they are coming closer and closer together. Like what makes a good brand pop-up today is whether you're experiencing something when you're there. I think what makes it a pop-up is someone is able to experience a brand in a physical location that brand is not normally at, right?
Yeah, so it has to be temporary.
It has to be temporary. You're not going to the Glossier store that is always there and just like interacting with the product that's new.
Or you are because they've collaborated with like a brand or something and they're like, this brand's going to be here for this day only.
But that's specifically only temporary. Is happening there.
You could classify like Netflix House, which we've covered on this show, as like an experiential, but that's not a pop-up because it's like... it's situated permanently in a few different places.
Yeah, Netflix owns that. It will always be there.
And I think part of the pop-up experience that is so important is that because it is temporary, it drives conversation and interest and attendance in a very condensed period of time. So they have to be kind of deployed in a way that is very strategic around when is the attention around this going to hit maximum capacity? How long is it? How many people can we get in and out the door? And then, the versus an experience, which you could make a retail shop an experience every time somebody goes, but it's there all the time. So it's a little bit less, the stakes are different. Yeah. The timing is
definitely. There's an exclusivity element, I think, to like a true pop-up.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like walking around New York too, you see it all the time. It's like for one day only, come to this thing. And you see lines everywhere of people waiting because it is like a temporary thing. So you're like, I have to wait in this line because I have to experience it today specifically.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I want to ask this. What is the point of a pop-up? So I feel like we kind of have danced around it a little bit, but like what does a brand have to gain by actually doing it other than making people stand in a big long line?
I mean, honestly, the line even draws conversation.
It draws attention.
I've seen
for
so
sure.
many videos recently of people filming lines and being like, what is this? Or like line culture's gone out of control, but it ends up being kind of free marketing for the event. Because like I saw one recently for a Toy Story pop-up in Soho for like, they were working with a Korean skincare brand and it was like, what is this line for? And then it panned to what it was for. And it was like, oh, I guess a lot of people want to go to this Korean beauty pop-up that they're doing with Disney.
Yeah, the culture of lines in New York is so interesting because sometimes people just get in line because they're like, oh, like it seems like a lot of people are excited about this. I've definitely like heard people talk about before. They're like, I will sometimes ask people in line like what they're standing in line for, and sometimes people don't know.
No, there's a herd mentality to it.
Yeah.
So people are like, oh, it must be good because there's like
Right.
100 people in
It
line for
must
this.
be worth it.
You gotta find out what you're standing in line for.
Right.
If you get to the front, you're
that-
like,
that
I
couldn't be
waited
me."
an hour and a half
Yeah.
for this. Are
Yeah.
you serious? But okay, so I think that's part of it, right? Is attention, obviously, conversation, buzz. But I think that a pop-up is also an opportunity for somebody to engage with your brand in a very different way. I said sensory, but really, I mean, if there's a sampling thing, you're actually interacting with the product. You can see it, you can feel it, or there's the story element, right? Like you get to kind of experience this brand in a more meaningful, maybe long-term way. You're going to walk away with some sort of emotion about the experience that you just had, and you'll carry that with you when it comes to like the brand experience.
Yeah,
after
definitely.
the fact.
I'm glad you call it the story element because that was so in reporting a story about kind of the ins and outs of brand pop-ups. I talked to the founder of Big Spoon, which is an agency that does a lot of experiential pop-ups. And we talked a lot about the importance of like really thinking about the story when you are building out a brand pop-up. And that can be easier said than done, especially for like a retail product, right? Like I think the pop-ups of yesteryear, like were easier to think about because it's like, oh, like we have an interesting new product. We're going to show up in a place that we aren't normally, and people will come to just experience the product.
Like a sampling event.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's just like, that doesn't stick in people's minds as much as like, okay, what is the like story we want people to walk away from this with? Which I think is easier accomplished with something like an IP, right? Like something like a TV show that has a world that you can like immerse people in and be like, okay, you are going through this particular set piece or this particular scene that you might be familiar with or you're not familiar with, but you're getting to know, and you kind of enter it here, you experience this thing in the middle, and you exit it at the end. But I also talked to the CMO of Good Wipes, Meredith Dean, and she talks a lot about how when they do pop-ups, they think a lot about the story of like the education behind the Good Wipes brand of like why you should use wipes or what you should consider and whether things are flushable or not, and having that in-person interaction and able to kind of explain that like is also a storytelling element, right? Of like being in person and talking to someone and being like, this is what our brand is all about and why you should engage with us. I think that's an interesting kind of perspective on like two different types of storytelling there.
It is kind of funny to me to think about someone being taught how to use a wipe.
I know.
In real life.
So true. But like I do think there are lots of things that people like don't know about like wipes, right? Like it's like you shouldn't flush wipes down your toilet, but then a lot of things like say that they are flushable. So like what's the truth and what goes into that? And that warrants conversation and thinking and is a story in itself.
Yeah, but I also imagine, again, part of it is like you actually get to see and smell and feel the product, which is
Yes.
going to be more convincing than just like having somebody tell you that.
Right,
You know, it's
right.
like that, it doesn't stick as much.
Totally.
I think that's something that's really interesting. We've talked on this show before about kind of this rise of focusing on entertainment, brands focusing on entertainment. And I feel like that's an opportunity. There are stories that can be kind of explored in a social series or something that can then maybe translate into the pop-up as you kind of build out a narrative for a brand. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. But I also think there's something interesting about just showing how a product is made, like from the beginning to end, if that's something that lends itself to a pop-up experience. I feel like there's something that you walk away with feeling like, oh, I understand this a little bit more than I did before I got in.
A potentially deeper connection to like the behind the scenes of like how this product comes to life and how it goes from like idea to like something that you have in your hands. Definitely like makes it something that sticks in your head a little bit more than just going to the store and getting whatever product. I think a good example of like the social series element that you mentioned, Kelsey, is MCO Beauty, a beauty brand earlier this year did a escape room kind of pop up across the country. They partnered with Escapology, which is an escape room brand. But like when you think about it, makeup and escape rooms, like there is no obvious connection there. So I think another key piece of pop-ups today is kind of like creating that narrative by partnering with someone or something to kind of make an entertainment piece around it. So they partnered with Tana Mongeau and created like a little social series that showed her like using the products and escaping like this beauty lab escape room, which was a fun piece to interact with online, and then you could go and like do it in real life. So I think it's interesting that like pop-ups are not just one thing that happens one time, but you kind of have to like build the layers beforehand before people are even like on site to engage with it too.
Yeah. I do think sometimes though there is a place for like the simple pop-ups, because I remember I interviewed studs like I think it was last year about how they do a bunch of it's like a piercing company, and they do ear piercings in their studios and they sell jewelry, but they do a bunch of collaborations with like food brands, especially in New York, and they get them to come in and like basically say like, hey, come and try this Magnolia Bakery product in our stores, and that gets foot traffic up. Like that was a huge thing, as they said, that we've seen a big increase in foot traffic, which then leads to like higher sales because people come in and they got to see the product and things like that. But it's kind of just an incentive to get people to come to your store in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of like opens up the world of like who you could partner with too, right? Like again, no obvious connection between Studs and Magnolia Bakery, but if someone's interested in one or the other, it gets you interacting with the brand that you're partnered with, which is a win-win for everyone involved.
I also think there's something interesting for brands that are DTC. They do not have a retail footprint, or they don't sell in stores. A pop-up is a really interesting way for them to test the waters of what an in-person experience looks like. If it's really successful, it could turn into like proof that maybe a permanent retail location is worth it in certain places. And I think that's a really interesting way to kind of use the pop-up as a testing ground, not just for how to explore a brand story, but actually see how it could work in terms of selling the product. And, you know, when you talk about increasing foot traffic, et cetera, somebody might, a brand might walk away from that and go, this was huge for marketing, et cetera, and content, but also like, this is proof that maybe we should invest in a permanent location somewhere, because then we can activate against this all the time. We don't have to build it and then tear it down and then build it and then tear it down.
And drum up the hype to get people there on a temporary basis. I think that's so interesting to bring up though, because, and this is a little bit of a bias because we all live in New York City, but it's definitely talked about amongst marketers across the country, is that I do feel like so many pop-ups happen in big cities like New York or LA. And if you are doing it as kind of a testing ground, like it really should be happening outside of those cities as well. Like there's the obvious draw of like 1 million more people live in these big cities and you're going to get foot traffic from people just walking by. But if your goal is to really like kind of do live in-person testing, your audience is probably all over the place. So how do you kind of pick the places that you should be popping up? And is there a more interesting factor in popping up in Cleveland, Ohio than in New York City?
Yeah. That's something that actually, I talked to the founder of Set Active recently, and she was saying that they've been doing pop-ups in like Austin and Chicago, and they just decided to put a brick and mortar store in Chicago. So like they kind of were using their pop-up strategy as a way to like, they brought the influencer experience to everyday people. That was kind of their whole pitch, was like, come to this. They did like a carnival in Austin, and they were like, we want to treat you guys like influencers. Here's your goodie bags. Here's all this stuff. And then they did it in Chicago too, and now they're going to actually like settle there. So I think there is a market for secondary cities too. It's not just New York and LA. Like, and I would make the argument that like some people in those cities are more inclined to go to your thing because
it doesn't happen as often.
It's not as saturated of a market. Like in New York, we walk by how many pop-ups in a day?
Right.
And it's like, okay, there's another one. Again, there's a huge line. Is it worth my time? But in a city where there's less going on with brands, like, yeah, I feel like people are more excited about the concept.
Yeah. I think in New York, there's definitely like a culture of like kind of rolling your eyes at seeing a brand pop up sometimes because it does happen so often. Like
There's
it kind
just
of,
too many.
The bar is higher to break through and like just casually catch the interest of someone. And yeah, showing up somewhere where it doesn't happen as often definitely is.
Ooh, are we at pop-up fatigue? We gotta, I mean, I think that this is such an interesting point because brands want to connect with consumers all across the country. And obviously New York and LA, there is a huge saturation of influencer. And if your goal of a pop-up is to get a ton of social content out of it and reach, you know, so you've invited people to come for samples, et cetera, because you want that social footprint, that's great. But that also is telling a certain story about your brand, which is like, we think that city is the most important for us to be in. And we think that these influencers are like the most important for us to target, which I think for many brands makes plenty, perfect sense. But I do think there's an opportunity for brands to say, let's identify some of these other places and some of these other because of course there are influencers in literally all over the world, like all over the country. You don't need a big city to be there. So there's this opportunity to stand out a little bit. And again, like you both were saying, if you do it in another place where there's a little bit less saturation, there might be higher attendance. You might actually get more. And it also is probably going to be less expensive. I don't have the numbers, but I would venture a guess that even just getting temporary space in New York and LA is going to be pretty pricey.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing to think about because like the reality of what makes a good pop-up today is definitely driving that online conversation, right? It's not just about the people that are in the room or in that physical space. Like you need it to live a little bit online to drive cultural conversation if that is what your goal is as a brand. But if you are only focusing your efforts on the influencer crowd, it does also make your brand seem like inaccessible to the regular person. So there's kind of trade-offs there of like how much do you dedicate to making your pop-up event as online likable as possible versus like making it something that is interesting to the average person and they feel like is welcoming of them to come into that space and to interact and learn something and walk away potentially a lifelong customer. I think one of the interesting examples that I talked to an agency about who worked on the Chili's Big Crispy Food Court is kind of thinking about like the physical things that people can walk away with too. It serves as a physical reminder of what you experienced there, but it's also something you can post online, right? Like people love things that like make them feel special. They specifically had like a illustration artist there to like draw people as they were there, and it just like plays on people's egos, and you're like, oh, like look at this cute thing that I couldn't have gotten anywhere else. So I think thinking about like the different like details are especially important as well.
Yeah, you want some proof that you stood in a line for 2 hours and went to that pop-up. You're like, hey, here's my art that I got at this, or here's my merch.
But I actually like that more than I like a tote bag or like a little
I don't need
thing.
any more of those.
Right. Like we're at beyond peak tote bag. But I think that if you're going, it's almost like a carnival, right? Like you are going and you get something that reminds you of that you were there with your friends, I think is kind of fun. And it's also not branded. I mean, I'm sure maybe there's something that indicates that it was from this event.
But it's not like the front and center of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like a gift card. And I think it can be very easy in a pop-up experience to just focus it on sampling and freebies, which I think is great. That's a great way for people to encounter the product. But it also then it's very transactional. It's like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to come in, I'm going to get free stuff, I'm going to take a photo, and I'm going to leave. That's it, versus something a little bit more meaningful. And I think that brands are always looking for something beyond the transaction to then, of course, enforce the transaction at some later date.
Right. I think it is a reality that like people like free stuff, like that will get people.
I was
going to
say that. Yeah. Like, people like free stuff. I see people wearing like merch that they probably got at something all the time, like whether it's a conference or like a brand thing, like whatever. Like people do wear that, and then that's free advertising for your brand.
Right. It's useful. So it's kind of like it's pros and cons of like how much do you want to engage with that versus like something that like could feel a little bit more meaningful for your brand at the end of the day. Okay, great. Well, lots to think about here, and taking all of that into account, I have a little game for you guys. It's called Pop Up or Pop Down. So I have a couple examples of real pop-ups that I've gathered, and I'm going to describe them to you. We're going to show you guys what it looked like on the screen, and you're going to tell me whether it was a pop-up, you loved it, like this is something that like really accomplished something unique and people should have showed up for it, or pop down as in like what were we doing here? Why did we do this? What was the point?
All right.
I'm so ready.
Show us.
Great. Okay, the first one I have for you is something called the Beis Wash. So this is a pop-up from luggage brand Beis, founded by Shay Mitchell of Pretty Little Liars fame, if anyone was also a big fan of that show, like me. It happened in February 2024 in West Hollywood, California. And they rented out a almost 2,000 square foot retail space and turned it into a car wash-like event where anyone could bring in their Beis luggage for a free wash and shine in the way that you would bring a car. And the idea for this pop-up came from the fact that a common customer complaint is that Beis luggage can get really dirty and scuffed up and marked up in traveling really easily. I actually have one and I can confirm it's doesn't look good. It's
dirty.
seen better days for sure. They also partnered with Scrub Daddy and Branch Basics, which is like a cleaning solution brand, to use those products and show people how they could use that as well. And on site, they could shop exclusive merch and get like exclusive luggage bundles. So they were like shopping elements, but the car wash, luggage wash element was free. Results wise, serviced close to 400 bags, but there was also some backlash because not everyone who wanted to engage in the pop-up could. Like, ultimately, there wasn't enough space or time to do it, so people were a little upset by that. And at the same time, there's a lot of UGC that was like, what a cool eye-catching event. So, taking all of that into account, what do you guys think? Pop up or pop down?
I covered this when it happened, and I really liked it. I feel like this was a good way to respond to like customer complaints because it shows you're actually doing something in a way that's very public and visible and got a lot of traction on social media. I think in a time of like planned obsolescence, when a lot of like stuff is made to break or not last, like showing that your product is cleanable and like can last a little longer than maybe people think is like valuable messaging.
Yeah, I actually think that this is a great example of like how a pop-up can be different. Like, this is providing a service and a value to somebody who is a customer, which I think goes a long way. It also, I think, helps improve somebody's sense of the value of purchasing the bag in the first place if they can either come and get it cleaned or they learn how to clean it. And I love the Scrub Daddy and Branch Basics kind of partnerships there. That feels very natural. If you're like, oh, it gets scuffed up, but I can use this power paste from Scrub Daddy or whatever, not sponsored.
You think about
I know,
it.
think about
Yeah,
it. Like,
yeah.
if you can do that, then that is really helpful in helping to prove that it's worth making that bigger. I think luggage is a bigger purchase than, I don't know, a pair of shoes or something. So I think that feels really smart. I think the big question is, how many people can we help? And how replicatable is this?
Yeah.
I think they were selling luggage cleaning kits as part of this too, if I remember correctly. So it was something that you could like buy online and like get to experience
and use
firsthand.
it. Yeah. I think that's what is an interesting piece of it, is that like the on-site element was free and people are like so excited about that, and they're like, okay, this is like an actual service. But then like you can buy things that you can use in the future, or you can buy the merch or whatever it is. So it's kind of a like pick how you want to play situation. It's not like just show up so we can sell you something. It was like, no, we actually are trying to help you with an issue that you have raised a concern about, and we're not just going to push that under the rug. Okay, so pop up or pop down?
Pop up. I think it's great.
Amazing.
I want
Okay,
to say pop off.
pop off, queen.
Pop off, queen.
Okay. I kind of like that better, so we can rename it. Okay, great. Next one I have for you is from The Real Real. So they did a Canal Street pop-up in summer 2024. Canal Street in New York City is a street famously known for knockoff luxury goods. And they did a storefront that was filled with fake bags that they caught during their authentication process. The key element here is that the store never opened. Like, it says on the storefront, Monday through Sunday closed every single day, and it was really functioned more as like an art installation piece. There was a QR code that you could scan that like gave you more information about the dangers of inauthentic goods and like why people should care about it. Results wise, Tracksuit actually found that this particular pop-up drove 3.25 million organic impressions across social media and increased positive brand sentiment by 73%. Awareness increased by 9%, consideration by 6%, and usage by 7%. So lots of like actual thinking and like consideration happened around this, but in a key manner, there was nothing to interact with. It was really just looking at it, and people online did kind of raise the concern of like, okay, how many people actually stopped and engaged with this and got the information that they should have
I'm going to say to start, how many people walk past something and scan a random QR code? I'm not about to put that on my phone.
So
like,
true.
To be totally honest.
Malware.
I do think that this is like a very fun like way to kind of engage with New York City in particular. Canal Street, obviously, like people, you can buy a counterfeit of literally any product in the universe on Canal Street. So I understand kind of the placement and the fun of that. But it's not really something you can super engage with. I like the educational element. Again, I've already made my opinions on QR codes very plain. But I think that it's almost a little bit of a bait and switch too. It's like, you can't actually come in, you know? So I think I think it's a little mixed for me.
Yeah, I like the placement. I like the idea of it. I do wish that they had done just like a pop-up store. I wish they had like actually sold products on Canal temporarily instead of just doing, because it leans a little bit more stunty to me if you can't actually like go in and touch the bags and see
Right.
the difference. Because like for all you know, you could look at that and go, okay, well, it's way cheaper right here in front of me from this vendor.
So true.
And it looks the same. Like you don't,
Right.
you know, as long as it's a good dupe, you know.
Right.
But
Right. But if the whole purpose is educate people on their authentication process and sort of make people aware that they work very hard to authenticate the products on their site, then it must have been a win for the brand, you know?
Right.
So, you know, I don't know if it works for me, but if it worked for them, it worked for them.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one to look at from the results lens because it drove a lot of conversation and people were impressed with the idea of it and the cleverness of like doing it on Canal Street. But like how lasting of an impression is that if you as the customer didn't necessarily get to go in and engage and like kind of like marinate in the idea of like what it means to
Like if you could go in and you could try to see if something was real or
Right.
not, like that could be actually
turn it into a little
lift
quiz.
up a fake versus a real product and
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
Teach
Or
people like what are the hallmarks
or
of
like
a fake
their
or a-
authenticator. I mean, that could be extremely educational. Of course, that also limits how many people can go through because I'm sure you'd have to
Yes.
keep it limited. But
It takes more effort.
right now,
ultimately.
it's like nobody can go in.
yeah. Okay, so what do we think? Pop up, pop down.
I'm sorry, pop down. I'm like, I want the
wanted more,
real
yeah.
walkthrough. Yeah, I wanted more.
A little
I
bit
would
more.
agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
love that. All right, next one I have for you is from Bloom, the sparkling energy drink. They did a Bloom treat shop in September 2025 in Soho, New York City. They turned a lot of their flavors into like ice cream, little sweet treats, different ways that people could engage with it. But the key element here was that they had a flavor station where attendees could try 6 unreleased flavors and vote on which ones they liked best to help potentially decide what flavor could be launched next from the brand. And people felt like they were kind of a part of the product development process. So what do you guys think? How impactful is this particular pop-up element?
I'm kind of stuck on the concept of energy drink ice cream.
Yeah, it is a lot of things in one for sure.
Ultimately, my tummy hurts.
Carbonated, dairy, probably not great for me.
Yeah, like based on that alone, my impression's not incredible.
Sure.
But I like the idea of like including your customer in the product development process, and, like
think-
making them feel like their voice has meaning.
I actually think that's a great thing about a pop-up experience is getting that real life, super tangible customer feedback. It's obviously not going to be a perfect representative sample of every single one of your customers, but you're getting people and you're seeing it in real life. And I think that's an interesting way to almost invite a customer into your brand story, right? If you're like, we're developing new things, like you get a chance of being a part of it, like really invites somebody to feel a lot more loyal because they feel like they're part of it. And I think that sampling part is very interesting to me. I've also, again, people love free stuff, but you know, I think that for a drink product, it's a relatively low barrier to entry, right? Like a free opening up some cans and putting out samples is pretty easy. It's not a huge high cost versus if you're giving samples of like beauty products or
Right.
things that could be far more expensive just from a net like amount of sampling. So I feel like that's feels like a really great way in. I don't know what sample they actually released. And of course, here's the challenge too. If people come in, they feel like they're really devoted to a flavor and then you don't release it. That's a challenge too.
Right, totally.
So
Like, what
I
if-
think there's a little bit of a calculus.
Yeah, what if like the majority of the people at the event were like, I really love this kind of horrible flavor combination that we put out as a placebo or a control, and it's like, oh, we never actually wanted to release that one. Like, what do you do with that feedback?
Right.
What if they hated all of them?
So true.
Because
yeah.
again, energy drink ice cream.
But I mean, valuable feedback, right? Because like, what if everyone in the boardroom was like, we actually really loved like 4 out of the 6 or whatever, but you're getting that real time feedback of like, actually, this might not be a great idea.
Yeah.
So what do we say? Pop up or pop down?
I'm going to say pop up, but not pop off. Like, I think
I would agree
it's
with
good.
that.
It's good.
Could be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for your thoughts. This was great. And thank you for tuning in. If you have any additional thoughts about brand pop-ups and want to share with us, send us an email at mkbw@morningbrew.com, which you can also find in the show notes. And we'll catch you next week.